Yuval Weber. He's a research assistant professor at Texas A&M's Bush School of Government and Public Service here in Washington, D.C. Yuval, always good to speak with you.
Thank you for having me on.
So we have to start with President Putin speaking there. By recognizing the two breakaway regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, as independent of Ukraine, how does it actually alter the calculus of war?
I think Sorry, there's a bit of echo or feedback.
I can hear you just fine, though, if you can keep going, actually.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, President Putin is giving a talk on Russian TV, and the big question is, so long story short, he had a meeting of the Federal Security Council today, and in which he had basically the people around him, the ministers, advise him to recognize the independence of Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. These are the areas that are held by the separatists at the current moment. And so he's actually giving a speech as we're speaking, in which he has called for, in fact, not recognizing the entire sovereignty of Ukraine altogether, blaming Vladimir Lenin, the first leader of the Soviet Union, for giving in too much to the nationalists, and that the real victim of the Soviet collapse was Russia, and that Russia, for its time since the end of the Soviet Union, has supported Ukraine to the extent of $250 billion. So the question for Putin is, will he recognize Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, just the areas that are already under separatist control, or will he extend the recognition of the areas that they should control beyond the line of control to the areas that are now controlled by the Ukrainian army and, by definition, the Ukrainian central government? If it's the former, then basically that's the off-ramp, and that will be Putin declaring success by means of just, in effect, taking parts of two different territories or two different provinces of Ukraine. If he goes for the more extended one, then we're about to see an incredible amount of violence. And certainly, this is going to it's likely this is going to be even more violent than the Yugoslavia wars of the 1990s. And that would be the most violence that Europe has seen since World War II.
A really dire prediction. So do you think now, since the narrative has changed so much, of not about when an invasion will happen, but how, does it look to you that an invasion might be sort of an all-out blitzkrieg, or just one that perhaps focuses on the Donbass region? Any hopes of that?
So the Russians at this point have placed 190,000 troops, according to press reports, in Belarus across its own borders, and in Crimea as well. So this will give Russia the ability to attack Kiev, attack Kharkiv, as well as attack the line of control, which separates the separatist republics from the rest of Ukraine. So Russia at this point is able to, in fact, do violence to more or less the entire area of Ukraine that it touches. And this could be anywhere from, aerial bombardment of the cities. This could be long-range artillery fires of the cities. This could be an amphibious assault on Odessa and Mariupol, as well as trying to expand the territory that's already held by the Russian-backed separatists. So when we're talking about the violence here, I don't want to sound like a crazy person or that I'm ranting, but we're about to see potentially an incredible amount of violence and a huge number of casualties, easily in the thousands, if not tens of the thousands, in the first day. And so that's the level of firepower that the Russians have arrayed against the Ukrainians in order to, in effect, make Ukraine stop trying to exercise its sovereignty. And that's what it really comes down to. Russia's given the Ukrainians three options. They can join the Russian-led organizations, they can basically be outside of any organization altogether, or they'll face, in effect, the full fury and might of the Russian armed services. And in effect, Ukraine has chosen to try to exercise its sovereignty, so they're not going to join the Russian ones, they're not going to basically stay out of anything, they'll still try to join the European Union. And in fact, that's what's causing President Putin and the people around him to be so angry. Ukraine trying to go its own way, choose its own organizations, that's what's calling into question Russia's status, Russia's prestige. And we're getting to the point where Russia is so offended by what Ukraine is doing that the amount of violence that we're going to see is probably not going to be commensurate to any of the military goals, but to the political objective of showing that Ukraine doesn't have full choice or full sovereignty of what it can do in terms of its foreign policy.